Hi, everyone. Welcome to Perspective for Parents. On May 1st, 2020, so about a month ago, the Today Show in Australia interviewed Dr. Kimberly Norris. She's a professor at the University of Tasmania, and she studies confinement and reintegration. She reported that we are at the beginning of the third quarter phenomenon. And that's a point kind of right after the midpoint where the anticipation of the end is in sight. And they studied people who are in submarines and space station and polar bunkers and found that those people, they become more irritable, are more prone to emotional outbursts and low productivity and low motivation. So we are in the third quarter phenomena, and today we have with us Schultz, who is principal of Lake Ridge Middle School, and he and his wife and 3 kids are members of our church, and we are so glad that you could join us. So welcome, Kurt.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, virtually.
Yes. So we were wondering, Kurt, if you would just tell us, what are some of the ways that you and your family are weathering this time?
Yeah, I think it's been an uneven experience for us, as I think it probably has been for many families. We've got a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old in our house, and each one of them and my wife and I all have different needs on different days. Some days are great and everybody's getting along and things go right according to plan and the routine that we've set up for everybody works. And other days, somebody's feeling grumpy or everybody's feeling grumpy. So Lillian, what you said about the third quarter phenomenon really resonates with a lot of how we're feeling in our house. It's definitely been, it's been a challenge, and it's also been a time when we've found some great moments. And that has been hard to deal with in its own way as we watch the news and try and take in all that's going on in the world. It's hard that we also are sitting in our backyard and enjoying time as a family together. And so it creates this sort of cognitive dissonance for all of us, but especially Jen and I, as we try and figure out, okay, so which of the things going on in the world do we talk about with the kids, and how much do we shelter and keep them safe from? And some of that is a reflection of the privilege that we live with, that we get to make a choice about that. And so it's sponsored a lot of conversations for Jen and I about how do we parent right now? What's the right thing to do? In the same way that I'm talking all the time with teachers at our school about how do we teach right now? How do we navigate this in ways that extend grace and patience and flexibility to kids and families as everybody's trying to figure this out, and as teachers are trying to manage their own families and their own feelings and emotions? It's a challenging time for all of us, especially as we miss the community that usually might center us or ground us or help us with perspective.
Right. And I think what you said, to extend grace, right? Is that how you're helping your teacher staff and your family navigate this time, to extend grace to one another and just be more flexible or forgiving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I kind of reflect on 3 things that help keep me focused most days. Some days I have more trouble with this than others. But one of them is trying to find perspective. Another one is trying to find purpose. And the third is really trying to keep in mind priorities. And whatever the interaction is, if I can think about, okay, what's the perspective that I have right now? And are there other perspectives that I need to be taking in or listening to? And especially as I work with, somebody who's feeling frustrated about what's going on at school, or as I watch the news about all that's going on that's heartbreaking around the protests and the systemic racism that exists in our world, those kinds of things are perspectives that I need to take in and I need to process and listen to and pay attention to. And they help me remember that my perspective is not always the most important thing. and being out of community and being isolated can make it harder to find that perspective, because you have to go and seek it. And it's, I think one of the dangers for parents and kids right now is we don't have some of the automatic perspective building that happens when we're in community or when kids are going to school. They're not having those conversations in classes with teachers. They're not reading all of the rich texts that might give them a window into another world. And so finding times and ways to take in perspectives that maybe are outside of the news universe that we might subscribe to on our Facebook feed or Twitter feed, or really intentionally reaching out to somebody whose perspective is different, to listen and understand it, and to help kids process facts or information or stuff they come across that maybe doesn't fit what they're accustomed to or what our family's norms are. Those are really important perspective conversations, but getting outside of our own perspectives has been a challenge, and it's something that we really have to work at, and we have to have a lot of conversations as a family about with kids, and I know it's something that teachers are processing too, as they deal with, well, I can't give the grades I normally give, and I can't do the lesson that I love in the last week of school. So that's really challenging. I think that comes up a lot around the issue of purpose is like, why am I doing this? You know, kids are asking, well, why do I have to log in and do this digital learning thing today? Or, you know, why do I have to answer all of these emails? It's all the same question that I'm getting from my students or the parents that I work with. And so it's really understanding that, you know, the purpose is to help take care of each other. And, you know, even in our family, why do I have to empty the dishwasher again today, Dad? Well, because that's part of us being in our family, care for one another, and to share this space well. And then, you know, especially as we think about what's ahead, you know, being in this third quarter, focusing on, well, what are the priorities moving forward? We all would love to go back to some vision of what we think normal was, or many of us would, but probably that's not a possibility. And there are things about normal that aren't good. And I think we're seeing that manifested in the protests all around us right now. There are things that we need to make better, and that we need to have very intentional conversations about, and to change pretty significantly about our systems. And if we're going to do those things, our priority can't be go back to normal, but our priority could be, how do we make the world safer for everybody right now? And we need to think about that with regard to coronavirus. We need to think about that with regard to access to digital resources for school. If we do have to do distance learning in the future, we have to think about that with regard to return to work and return to shopping or going to parks or camping. All of those things have implications around safety, and our priority really needs to be taking care of each other and making sure that everyone stays safe and well. And for those folks who aren't feeling safe and well, that we're doing everything we can to make the world a safer, better place for all of us.
I loved, Kirk, how you said the whole thing about perspectives, because it's helping kids step out of ourselves and really step out, you know, which is really stepping out with the eyes of Jesus, of seeing someone that is different, that they perceive as different, but is really just the same as we are. I love that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy, especially right in this moment, to just live in our own perspective.
Yes.
And because we rely on community for perspective. And even that can be challenging when our community all looks like us, or all talks like us, or all thinks like us. And so finding ways as parents to help our kids have conversations and learn from and listen to folks who don't look like us, who don't have our lived experience, or who have different ideas or different ways of thinking about the world that can inform or shift our perspective in positive ways, I think is really critical. And I think that's one of the functions of spending time in text and spending time in community with others and talking about things is really figuring out what are all of the possible perspectives on the situations that are going on around us, and how do we then start to assimilate some of those perspectives into how we move forward together.
Kurt, I so appreciate your words today, because what I hear is hope. It's not all dread and frustration, but what I hear is hope, and seeing, what is at the end of this. How will we come out as a family, as a school system, as our society at large, and a nation? How can we come out with this in a hopeful way? And so I want to bring to mind a scripture passage from Jeremiah 29:11, and it says, "For I know," so this is God speaking, he says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you." And that word prosper has the connotations of good and peace and welfare. So I have peace and welfare for you, and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And particularly in the KJV, in the King James Version, for a future, the wording is unexpected end. So the Lord has plans to give us hope and unexpected end. And so I just want to encourage all of our LGK families and parents who are listening that there is hope, even though it's difficult. It's difficult conversations that we'll be having. Change will be difficult as Kurt, you mentioned, are not going back to what was normal, but establishing a different standard or a different outlook in life and how we treat one another. Things will be different, but there is hope in that the Lord has that all in his hands. And so I want to encourage all of you to be kind to yourself and kind to others around you, especially during this third quarter, as we turn our eyes to God, who has a plan and knows when the end will be. Thanks for joining us for Perspective for Parents. Until next time, bye.